Wes Streeting has just had the best and the worst week of his political life, or rather he's in the middle of that. On the one hand, he has walked out of an attempted kneecapping by Number 10 looking like the only grown-up in the room, with MPs quietly concluding that if anyone is going to inherit a collapsing Starmer project, it's probably him. On the other, he is the Health Secretary presiding over yet another 5-day walkout by resident doctors, and NHS running incredibly hot, and a waiting list that has inched down on paper but feels immovable if you are stuck on it. Politically, Streeting has played a blinder. The anonymous briefings that cast him as a would-be usurper allowed him to audition for the leadership in real time. Loyal to the Prime Minister, funny about the Westminster soap opera, ruthless about the toxic culture in Number 10, the traitor's joke landed. The contrast with Starmer's brittle, legalistic style was obvious. You can see why he's now the bookmaker's favourite among Labour MPs. He looks like someone who actually enjoys politics and who can carry an argument on live television without sounding as if he's reading the auto cue in his head. But the question is more serious. Is the NHS safe under Streeting, and is it really on the road to recovery, as he now insists? On the numbers, there's a sliver of truth and a slab of spin. The elective waiting list in England has fallen very slightly from 7.41 million in August to 7.39 million in September, the first small drop of months, and around 230,000 fewer cases than at peak in 2024. The proportion seen within 18 weeks has ticked up to around 61.8%. That is better than it was, and health think tanks have fairly said that it is a welcome reduction and a sign the system is at least no longer sliding backwards every single month. However, look at what is happening behind those headlines. Performance in A&E is dire. More than 54,000 people waited over 12 hours for a bed in October, with a total 4-hour trolley waits rising again. Flu admissions among older people are already surging, and NHS England itself openly admits the service is approaching its limit before even this latest strike and the worst of winter. The waiting list fall is 15,845 cases in a pool of 7.39 million, statistically meaningful but experientially almost invisible. Then add the industrial relations picture. Resident doctors have had in aggregate close to 29% uplift over 3 years, far more than most public sector workers, yet the BMA is still demanding a further 20+% to restore pre-2008 real terms pay. Support for the strikes has eroded. Recent polling has public opinion narrowly against industrial action, and one Savanta survey reported by The Times suggests only about a third of resident doctors now actively back this particular 5-day walkout after Streeting's latest offer, with nearly half saying it should have been called off. That is the space Streeting is trying to occupy. The "I understand the grievances, but this is not reasonable anymore" line that Polly Toynbee rather remarkably has endorsed. From a purely political standpoint, you can see the logic. If he buckles now, he confirms every caricature about Labour, unions and open checkbooks, and detonates Reeve's already fragile fiscal stance. If he holds firm, he has a chance to show that a Labour government can say no to a powerful, media-savvy, professional lobby without collapsing into 1970s pastiche. That is why newspapers hostile to Labour are suddenly cheering him on as a kind of Blairite Iron Chancellor of the NHS, and why parts of the Labour left, and indeed some medics, see him as a class traitor in a sharp suit. The problem is that none of this necessarily makes patients feel safer. An NHS is not safe simply because the minister has found a politically plausible line on pay. Safety for patients depends on 4 things: timely access, stable staffing, independent scrutiny, and a clear sense that the system is being reorganised to make care closer, not further away. On access, Streeting can point to marginal gains in the waiting list and to the rhetoric of his 10-year health plan. Prevention over late-stage crisis care, hospital to community, analogue to digital. On staffing, the strikes speak for themselves. We have a demoralised workforce, a training system that creates bottlenecks, and an industrial dispute that is now on its 13th round with no obvious end game. On scrutiny, the decision to abolish Health Watch England and the local Health Watch network and fold patient voice into the very bodies patients are meant to be scrutinising looks extraordinarily tin-eared, which is why Andy Burnham and Richard Leese are preparing to warn Streeting directly that he's about to silence one of the few genuinely independent channels of feedback. And on reorganisation, the flagship idea this week is to create advanced foundation trusts, effectively a new class of high-performing hospitals and community providers with extra autonomy over budgets and services, able to spend surpluses more freely on scanners, buildings and local priorities. That is not insane policy. It is a recognisable continuation of the new Labour tradition of earned autonomy and quasi-market incentives. But if you are on a trolley in a corridor or trying and failing to get through to your GP, the creation of a new badge for already decent providers looks suspiciously like an internal management game, and it's almost certainly going to create yet more bureaucratic posts that the greedy bureaucrats can take over and line their pockets with the pay. So, is the NHS on the road to recovery? Statistically, it has at least turned slightly away from the cliff edge. Politically, Streeting has turned a botched coup attempt into a demonstration of his own resilience and, frankly, his superior communication skills. But if you're asking the question that matters, can ordinary people reliably access timely, humane care without weeks of anxiety, months of waiting, or years of delay, then the answer is still no. A lot of people are already going abroad. A lot of people are already on waiting lists. Many people are suffering in pain or dying. A modest amount in the waiting list, a clever speech in Manchester, a new label for good trust do not amount to a settled social guarantee. In that sense, the NHS may be marginally less sick on the spreadsheet. In the waiting room, it still feels feverish, short of breath and permanently on the brink. Streeting has shown that he is politically capable. Whether he is structurally serious about capacity, about primary care, about honest taxation for honest healthcare, and about genuinely independent patient voice is the test that lies ahead. At the moment, the system is not safe. It is simply surviving.